Live. Okay, it says we're live. Liam insists on doing the introduction.
And I want to get low because I don't have any clothes on. So, not any clothes on. Just
it's fine.
That. So this is part 2 of part 1. My dad had nose surgery a few days ago, so we're testing how his new voice sounds. And he is reading. We had a cliffhanger in the last story. Now we're in Marco Comes Late. Good luck.
Thank you. All right. Yes, as Liam said, I'm 13 days past having surgery. I had turbinate reduction, sinuplasty, and septoplasty. I'm breathing much better. I'm 6 days past my first debridement procedure. I'm having another one tomorrow. I can finally kind of breathe through my nose. It kind of comes and goes, but my voice is more or less back. So as Liam indicated, we're going to continue where we left off last time.
Yes.
And read Marco Comes Late. And your job is to fall asleep.
And do one more time.
No, you're going to fall asleep. Marco Comes Late by Dr. Seuss. Young man, said Miss Block, it's 11 o'clock. The school begins promptly at 8:45. Why, this is a terrible time to arrive. What's wrong with you boys? Your head made of wood? Why didn't you come just as fast as you could? What is your excuse? It had better be good. Marco looked at the clock. Then he looked at Miss Block. Excuse? Marco stuttered. Well, you see, it's like this. Something happened to me. This morning, Miss Block, when I left home for school, I hurried off early according to rule. I said when I started at 8:15, I must not, I will not, I shall not be late. I'll be the first pupil to be in my seat. Then bang, something happened on Mulberry Street. I heard a strange peep, and I took a quick look. And you know what I saw with the look that I took? A bird laid an egg on my arithmetic book. I couldn't believe it, Miss Block, but it's true. I stopped and I didn't know quite what to do. I didn't dare run and I didn't dare walk. I didn't dare yell and I didn't dare talk. I didn't dare sneeze and I didn't dare cough, because if I did, I would knock the egg off. So I stood there stock still, and it worried me pink. Then my feet got quite tired, and I sat down to think. And while I was thinking down there on the ground, I saw something move, and I heard a loud sound of a worm who was having a fight with his wife, the most terrible fight that I've heard in my life. The worm, he was yelling, that boy should not wait. He must not, he dare not, he shall not be late. That boy ought to smash that egg off his head. Then the wife of the worm shouted back, and she said, to break that dear egg would be terribly cruel. An egg's more important than going to school. That egg is that mother bird's pride and her joy. If he smashes that egg, he's the world's meanest boy. And while the worms argued about what I should do, a couple big cats started arguing too. You listen to me, I heard one of them say. If this boy doesn't go on to school right away, Miss Block will be frightfully, horribly mad. If that boy gets there late, she will punish the lad. Then the other cat snapped. I don't care if she does. This boy must not move. So I stayed where I was, with the egg on my head and my heart full of fears, and the shouting of cats and of worms in my ears. Then while I was wondering when all this would stop, the egg on my book burst apart with a pop. And out of the pieces of red and white shell jumped a strange brand new bird, and he said with a yell, I thank you, young fellow, you've been simply great. But now that I'm hatched, you no longer need wait. I'm sorry I kept you till 11 o'clock. It's really my fault. You tell that to Miss Block. I wish you good luck and I bid you good day. That's what the bird said. Then he fluttered away. And then I got here just as fast as I could, and that's my excuse. And I think it's quite good. Miss Block didn't speak for a moment or two. Her eyes looked at Marco and looked him clean through. Then she smiled. It's a very good tale if it's true. Did all of those things really happen to you? Well, Marco answered Marco with a sort of a squirm. Not quite all, I guess. But I did see a worm. You're not even laying down. You should be sleeping. Do you have something more to say?
As in the story, they said Mulberry Street. If you have this book, on another story in this book, you will also see the word Mulberry Street. Keep that in mind.
Is that in this book? Because there's a whole other book about Mulberry Street. Yes, How Officer Pat Saved the Whole Town does have Mulberry Street in it. Well, to compare apples to apples, I'm going to go backwards and reread Horton and the Quagger Bug, and if you're still awake, then we'll read How Officer Pat Saved the Whole Town.
Yeah, because that's a triple in one.
But you need to try to fall asleep. Are you ready?
Yes.
Is this light keeping you up?
I'm kind of squeaky.
Who is kind of squeaky?
I didn't have enough time to feel the other word. I'm squeaky clean and I'm squeaky tired.
Try to sleep. Here we reread Horton and the Quagger Bug, probably my favorite Dr. Seuss story found in Horton and the Quagger Bug, and more lost stories. It happened last May on a very nice day, while the elephant Horton was walking, they say, just minding his business, just going his way, when a Quagger Bug dropped from a tree with a plunk and landed on Horton the elephant's trunk. The Quagger Bug leaned toward the elephant's ear. Perhaps you were wondering, he said, why I'm here. Well, I've got a secret, he whispered. I know of a beezelnut tree where some beezelnuts grow. Beezelnuts, Horton looked up with wide eyes. Beezelnuts, this was a happy surprise. For of all the nuts in that jungle to eat, the nut of the beezel by far was most sweet. But why, Horton asked, do you tell this to me? Well, you see, the bug answered, my beezelnut tree is rather far off, and I'm not very strong. I'd get there much quicker if you came along. So I'll make you a deal that I think is quite fair. You furnish the legs and you carry me there. I'll furnish the brains, show you the way to the tree. Then half of the nuts are for you, half for me. A deal, Horton said with a smile on his face. Hold tight and we're off to your beezelnut place. Just steer me and show me the best road to take. No road, laughed the Quagger Bug. We'll take the lake. And he steered the big elephant down to the shore of a lake that was 30 miles long, maybe more. Uh-oh, shivered Horton. Now wait just a minute. I can't swim that lake. It has crocodiles in it. Just look at their terrible teeth, how they flash. They'll chew me right up into elephant hash.
You not only know my dad again, so I'm just saying it from here. So listen carefully. As in video 1, you also hear beezelnut stew.
Yes, I am rereading the same video from the same book from video 1, so it'll all be the same. You need to try to fall asleep. Get rid of that. Close your eyes. Try to sleep. I can't swim that lake. It has crocodiles in it. Just look at their terrible teeth, how they flash. They'll chew me right up into elephant hash. I think, Mr. Bug, that there surely must be a much safer way to your beezelnut tree. Now, said the Quagger Bug, don't start to squeal. You promised you'd go, and a deal is a deal. Horton thought. What he says is quite true. A deal is a deal. I must see the deal through. So bravely the elephant dived in that pond, and he swam for the shore far beyond. while Crocodile snapped and attempted to eat his tail and his ears and the soles of his feet. They nipped at his heels, they nabbed at his chin, and he thought as he fought that he never would win. But he swam and he swum, and he held his trunk high, with the quagga bug on it, quite safe and dry.
What level is that light at?
Minimum. Is it too bright?
Kind of.
Are you closing your eyes?
Yes.
This is an awful lot of interruptions.
Sorry.
With the quagga,
Sorry, folks, for the interruptions.
try to sleep. A terrible fellow, that quagga bug guy, just sat there and bossed him. You hustle, now hustle. I'll furnish the brains and you furnish the muscle. So from 10 in the morning till 2:15, poor Horton fought on till he finally got through to the side of the lake where the bezel nuts grew. He crawled from the water, tired, battered, and wet. Now where, Horton asked, are those nuts that I get? Oh, laughed the quagga bug, you're not there yet. Climb that, said the bug, pointing up in the sky at a terrible mountain 9,000 feet high. Climb that, Horton gulped. Not the way that I feel. Tut, tut, said the bug. Now a deal is a deal. And don't start to argue, no ifs and no buts. You'll furnish the ride and I'll furnish the nuts. The climb, sighed poor Horton, will kill me, no doubt, but a deal is a deal and I cannot back out. He drew a deep breath and he threw back his shoulders and dragged his tired legs over rocks and big boulders. He stumbled and staggered uphill over stones that tattered his toenails and bruised all his bones, while the quagga bug perched on his trunk all the time and kept yelling, "Climb, you dumb elephant, climb!" He climbed. He grew dizzy. His ankles grew numb. But he climbed and he climbed and he clumb and he clumb. His hearing grew faint and his eyesight grew dim, but he clumb and he clumb and he clim and he clim. From 2:15 until 4:45, till finally old Horton, more dead than alive, had carried that bug to the very tip-top, and then, only then, did the elephant stop. He gasped to the bug as he sank to his knees. Now where are my bezel nuts, sir, if you please? Right there, said the bug. Horton looked, it was true. 'Twas the bezel nut tree where the bezel nuts grew. But bug, Horton moaned, we're here and they're there. Way out on that peak and between us is air. How can I get through that space in between? I can't walk on air, if you see what I mean. A deal is a deal, snapped the bug. I'm the boss. You stretch out your trunk and you put me across. Stretch, Horton, stretch, yelled the bug, so he stretched. He stretched it 2 feet, but it still wouldn't touch. Streech, Horton, streech, yelled the bug, so he streeched. It hurt him real badly, but finally it reached. At last, sang the quagga bug, chuckling with glee, and he slid down the trunk to his bezel nut tree. And he picked all those nuts and he stacked a big mound of luscious sweet bezel nuts high on the ground. But hey, called the elephant, you over there. Half of that mound, don't forget, is my share. Not yet, said the bug. All of the nuts have been stacked, but before we can share, they have got to be cracked. So he cracked all the nuts, then he said with a laugh, a deal is a deal, and I'm giving you half. 1/2 of each nut, as you know, is the meat, and that is the half I am keeping to eat. But half of each nut, as you know very well, is the half of the nut that is known as the shell. The shells are for you, laughed the bug, and he rose and he stuffed all the shucks up the elephant's nose. Now what would you do if he did that to you? With shucks up your nostrils, how dreadful you'd feel. But you couldn't complain, because a deal is a deal. You'd have to act terribly nice and do right. So you'd say in a voice that was very polite, thanks, Mr. Quagga Bug. Thank you for these. But they tickle my nose. So look out, I shall sneeze. And you'd sneeze and you'd sneeze and you'd sniz and you'd sniz and you'd blow all the shucks from your trunk with a whiz. Just the way Horton did. because they blew out of his. And they blasted that quagger bug so far away that he sailed through the air for the whole month of May, and didn't come down to the 15th of June all tattered and torn in the late afternoon, at a place so far now he never can go to his beezelnut tree where the beezelnuts grow. Next we have How Officer Pat Saved the Whole Town. The job of an officer of the police is watching for trouble and keeping the peace. He has to be sharp and he has to be smart and try to stop trouble before it can start. And that's why one morning, while out on his beat on the corner of Chestnut and Mulberry Street, he got sort of worried, did Officer Pat, when his very keen eyes spied a very small gnat going buzz round the head of old Thomas the cat. "Aha," murmured Pat, "I see trouble in that." If that gnat bites the cat, and he might very well, that cat will wake up and he'll let out a yell. That's only small trouble, I know it, but brother, one small bit of trouble will lead to another. The trouble with trouble is trouble will spread. The yowl of that cat will wake Tom, Tim, and Ted, those terrible triplets of Mrs. McGowan. Then they'll howl a yowl that'll wake this whole town. When trouble gets started, it always starts more. Those kids with their racket and ruckus and roar will frighten the birds, and the birds will come flapping down Mulberry Street with a yipping and yapping. Once trouble gets going, it spreads just like fire. Those birds will come screaming towards Mr. McGuire, the fish market man, and he'll get such a scare, he'll toss that big codfish high up in the air. That's the trouble with trouble. It grows and it grows. That fish in the air will land smack on the nose of that horse over there that belongs to Bill Hart. The horse will start kicking, Hart's wagon apart, and pumpkins will bounce on the head of Jack Warner, who's fixing that hydrant down there on the corner. And once all those pumpkins start falling on Jake, he'll fall on his wrench and the hydrant will break. There's no stopping trouble once trouble gets going. When hydrants get broken, the water starts flowing. The water will gush right on Mrs. Manila. She'll think that it's raining and put up her umbrella. And that'll knock young Bobby Burke off his bike. He'll fall on the ladder of House Painter Mike. And House Painter Mike, when he tumbles, will spill a bucket of paint on the head of Don Dill. Spaghetti. Oh, once it gets started, there's no stopping trouble. That splashing of paint will upset Mrs. Hubble. She'll drop all her dishes, they'll smash on the ground, and startle her dog, and the poor frightened hound will jump in the horn of old horn tooter Fritz, and Fritz will fall backwards and scare driver Schmitz on his dynamite truck, almost out of his wits. And that dynamite truck with its big load of blitz will race toward that tree, and oh boy, when it hits, the whole of this town will be blown to small bits. But lucky for us down on Mulberry Street, good Officer Pat was awake on his beat. And quick the brave officer swung his big bat on the troublesome head of that troublesome gnat, and kept him from biting old Thomas the cat, and stopped all the trouble before it began. He saved the whole town. What a very smart man. Are you awake?